Hello and welcome. If you're catching the replay, we're so glad to have you that way. I'm Teresa Beschwait, and I'm your facilitator today. And it is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you today's presenter, Markel Morris. Markel is a career counselor and coach. She has more than 20 years of experience. She's the author of Fast Track Your Career, which is in its second edition, and Create a Career You Love: 5 Steps to Define Your Next Career Move. Markel understands very well the dynamics of loss and grief and restarting a career from her own personal experience. She unexpectedly became a widow when her husband, Mark, died suddenly just weeks before their first anniversary. A few months later, she received a brain tumor diagnosis and spent the next year in treatment. After her recovery, she stood at her own crossroads. She had to figure out how to reestablish her employment and reinvent her career. In addition to her work with Futures in Motion Incorporated, Markel is an associate faculty member at Santa Monica College General Counseling and Transfer Services, and an adjunct career counselor at Cypress College Career Planning Center in California. She serves as a past president and finance co-chair of the California Career Development Association, as a volunteer grief group facilitator at New Hope Grief Support Community in Long Beach, California. And on her spare time, she's on the board of directors for the Hope for Widows Foundation. She received her master's degree in counseling from the University of San Diego and her bachelor's degree in sociology from UC Santa Barbara. Go Gauchos. Markel, it's such a pleasure to meet you and to introduce you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I will go ahead and share my screen. So thank you so much for the introduction. I've been a presenter here a few times, and as Trissa mentioned, I am a career counselor and a job search coach, and I've been widowed for about 10 years. So just last week, the 23rd, was 10 years since my husband Mark passed away. And I've been a volunteer with Soaring Spirits for about 5 years. So it took me a little bit of time before I, really got deep into grief support community. And in the early days of loss after my husband passed away and surviving a brain tumor, I could not have imagined that I would be happy again. I could not have imagined that I would find joy again, that I'd be thriving again. Before loss, I had goals, I had a positive outlook, I had a lot of confidence. And then after loss, all of that went away. I found myself in a place where I was just kind of surviving, hoping to get through the days. I was existing, kind of marking time. I had a lot of fear about the future. I lacked confidence. And then today, fast forward, with a lot of time, but a lot of intentional actions, I have new hobbies, I have new interests, I have new goals. I would say that my community has expanded, and I'm in a place today where I'm really thriving. And what I'm going to talk with you today about are the steps that I took to reimagine my future. I will explain and describe some of the specific exercises and mindsets that I had to adopt so that I could rebuild my future. You don't have to do everything that I'm going to share with you. I'm just going to share with you what I did on my journey. And my hope is that you'll find some inspiration and encouragement and some practical steps that you can take to reimagine your future. So as a career counselor and coach, I work a lot with people who are trying to redefine their careers, especially among my widowed clients. My clients have found themselves in a place where maybe they're re-evaluating their career direction. Their career has changed in meaning to them, and they're wanting to see what else might be available for them. Or in some cases, they might have to re-enter the job market. And so I help my clients redefine what their career goals are figure out ways that they can combine their natural strengths and their interests into a meaningful lifestyle, and then develop a plan and strategy to get there. So one of the many of the ways that I've done that is by creating online courses and workbooks, and some of what I have done over the years, I've incorporated into these guides, which I'll share with you. And for me, a big part of my purpose that I discovered after loss was to educate people and to guide and coach people in navigating their life after loss. When my husband Mark died, I was in shock. And as you all know, loss affects so many different areas of our lives. It's really hard to process. And for a while, all I could do was just survive. I didn't have any more energy to do that. And I barely had the energy to do that. So just getting through the days was hard enough. I couldn't think about my future. But eventually I did come to a place where I started thinking beyond my circumstances and what I wanted. And I wanted more meaning, and I wanted a greater sense of purpose, because I had that and I wanted that again. For a long time, though, even as a career counselor and as a coach, helping people do that, I didn't really know what to do about it. But I did take some steps to figure it out. Just to kind of give you a little bit of a reminder about what my background or what my journey is, and give you some context. So all of what happened to me, as you heard in my introduction, happened within a very short amount of time. Before my husband and I married, and I had to leave a job, or I decided to leave a job unexpectedly. And then my husband and I, started dating during that time. It was very fast, was a whirlwind in some ways, but we had met actually when we were children, and we went to junior high and high school. So we kind of got reacquainted in adulthood. And it was a dream come true for both of us. So we didn't waste any time, kind of sealing the deal, getting married. And we were married by the end of that year. And then, we were going on about our lives. We had, hopes and dreams for our future. We wanted to have a family. We come from the suburbs. We wanted to sort of establish ourselves there. And then one day, one Tuesday morning, unexpectedly, Mark passed away from a massive heart attack. And it was just 3 weeks before our 1 year anniversary. And I was devastated, and as you can imagine, and it took everything out of me. Gosh, I always get a little bit emotional when I talk about this. It took everything out of me. I had no idea what to do with that. I was a young widow, and I didn't have any friends who had experienced anything like what I had experienced being so young. And the only people that I knew who had been widowed were like at the time, my 90-year-old grandmother. And her life was completely different from mine. My mother also had been a widow. She was older than I was. And I had no point of reference. I didn't know what to do with all of this. And so as I went through, the weeks, the days, the weeks, then the months there, I started, getting a little bit of strength, and, a little bit of hope. And then I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and that completely threw me off balance again. Like, wow, what am I supposed to do with all of this disruption in my life, this loss and devastation? It threw me off balance. I felt like I was just constantly being taken over by huge waves. And I couldn't make any decisions because I was traumatized. I had widow brain, all of this. And I could barely think about a future. I could barely think about the next day. So in all of this, never having imagined my life without Mark, it's amazing how quickly, our hopes and dreams melded together, and we became this unit, and our futures were with each other. And even though, of course, it's a possibility that your person is going to pass away, you just never think it is going to happen to you. It's not something that your brain or your heart can really process. And then when it does happen, it's surreal. Everything changes in your life, and I'm sure that you can relate to this. Right now, I heard in the introduction, many of you are really new in your grief, and right now, many of you might be feeling like this ball represents a tangled up ball of emotions. You might be feeling overwhelmed. You might be feeling confused, scared, angry, maybe loss of confidence. And all of that is totally normal, especially in the early stages of grief. It doesn't help with future planning, but it's totally normal because this loss does affect every component of your life, your relationships, how you relate to other people, your emotions, your sense of what you thought life was all about, your cognition, your mental processing, your physical well-being, and your financial life. It affects everything. And so as you're thinking about your future from this point, all what you will do will have to incorporate, thoughts and goals for each one of those areas. For me, as I started searching for a way forward, one action that I took that sort of touched everything that really, really helped me that I'd like to talk about is journaling. Uh, Initially, I couldn't really imagine what my future could look like. And right now, you might be feeling like thinking about the future is just too much. But in time, as you get more days under you, you're going to begin to look past your present circumstances. So I encourage you to start journaling now if you haven't started already, or to continue if you have not, if you have already done so. For me, the path to forward and the vision for my future emerged from my journaling. Initially, journaling for me was just simply an outlet for my emotions, for my thoughts, and for my feelings. And that's really what it was at first. And then it became for me a source of inspiration and encouragement. It began to spark hope for me. I started collecting quotes and affirmations, new ideas, things I was grateful for, positive things that people told me, and accomplishments. And I would write about that in my journal. And then over time, as I started writing about those things, my journal became more of a goal setting tool. And I started to write more about my goals and my aspirations and desires, because I was writing first about all my, my despair and how this was so hard and I can't do this and why is this happening to me and this is not fair, and then I started adding in more positive things that people were sharing with me that I came across because I was searching for a way not to be miserable anymore. And as I started writing that, I started noticing shifts in my attitude, and I started noticing that hope was beginning to take hold. And hope is like an anchor. And for me, it started anchoring me and it started giving me a sense of stability. And in that, then it started motivating me. And then my journal became a source of motivation for me. I began to track my accomplishments towards my goals and the progress that I was making. So for me, journaling became a really important component in my healing journey. In my journaling, though, there were three ideas that really, as I look back, really helped me to reimagine my future. And one, kind of like I was mentioning, is a positive mindset. Not just, oh, you have to have a positive mindset, but I learned that there was so much power in it. Because as I started redirecting my thoughts into things that were positive, into ideas that were positive, affirmations, quotes, and positivity, I started noticing that my attitude to change. And in the best of circumstances, having a positive mindset is really hard. And then when you faced with unexpected, devastating, life-altering challenges, doubt and fear becomes amplified. And perhaps many of you can relate, or all of you can relate to that. And then when you dare to take a step forward, that there's that voice that comes in, like, hey, should you do that? Do you really want to do that? What if it doesn't work out? What if something bad happens again? And excuse me. So all those thoughts start coming. So you can't just say, I'm going to think positively. You can't just use willpower to get you there. You have to cultivate it. You have to build the habit, and you have to feed it daily. Before loss, again, I considered myself to be relatively positive, but all of these things that happened really shook me to my core. Mm-hmm. And so I got grief support and mentors, and these were some of the things that they shared with me to do. And one of the things that really, really helped me initially in the journaling was to start building a gratitude habit. And so in my journaling, as I mentioned, I started journaling with gratitude. And gratitude is a cornerstone of a positive mindset. And it's a cornerstone of of a positive life, of a satisfying life. And at first, of course, it was very difficult for me, and it might be difficult for you to think positively. I mean, your my world was shattered, your world is shattered, and but a positive or a grateful attitude is really essential to having the best life possible. And what will begin to happen is you will start becoming more confident. You'll start becoming more hopeful, and eventually you'll begin to see possibilities. You'll begin to see possibilities where you used to see obstacles, and you'll begin to see opportunities where you used to see closed doors. And so to build this habit, I got a dedicated notebook. I have lots of notebooks. I'm kind of a notebook junkie, but I also have my phone, and I took notes wherever I wanted to be able to write down my thoughts wherever I went. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You could use a notebook from Dollar Tree or something, and or just some paper, scratch paper. But what I did was, and I committed initially to doing this for 30 days, and I encourage you to do this. And every morning before I started my day, I would write something that I was grateful for, and then every night before I went to bed, I would write something that I was grateful for. And what I did this, I started tuning in to how I was experiencing life. And in the times when I wanted to complain about something, I stopped myself and I searched for, a blessing or something positive in the situation. So something, as common, and I live in Southern California, so traffic is very common for us here. And so instead of, focusing on the fact that I was stuck in traffic and being really grouchy about that, I would stop myself and focus on the fact that, first of all, I had a job to go to because I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills initially. I had reliable transportation, which I had to get after my husband passed away, and I had the resources to keep my car going. So just as basic as that. And once I got into the habit, I got on a roll and I began searching for things to be able to write down that I was grateful for. And think about this, if you do this for 30 days, you'll have 60 things that you're grateful for within that time frame, and you can look back at that and your attitude will change. My attitude changed significantly. I noticed positive changes overall in just my well-being. I had more energy, had more creativity. I enjoyed my relationships more, and all overall my hope and my joy grew, and that's what enabled me to then start thinking about possibilities. And that's what I also learned through this, is that there were the possibilities for a meaningful life and a purposeful life were endless. And I've also recognized that I had the power to decide to create a new future for myself. At first, I resisted this idea because I just wanted to kind of rewind and go back to what my life was before. I wanted, because the future I looked at in front of me didn't have the most important thing, which was my husband. I didn't want a future without him. That's why I married him. And we were happy and we had goals together. And then, with having had the brain tumor and going through brain surgery, I had scars that I saw every day, and I had the residual effects of having had brain surgery. And these were constant daily reminders of the life that I no longer had and the future that I had to rebuild for myself. But eventually, I did accept that my old life was just gone and it wasn't coming back. And I recall, there were people, of course, I recall thinking about, people who had been widowed and reading about, surely I'm not the only one ever in the, history of time who has been widowed, and people have managed to get through this. I can do it too. And I know people who literally had to rebuild their homes, their physical dwelling, due to natural disasters that had destroyed everything that they had, their home and all of their worldly possessions. And there was nothing left for them except for the foundation. But I recognized that for me, my foundation had become gratitude. And I realized that rather than seeing my life as destroyed, I could see my future as a blank slate. and I could create it to be anything I wanted it to be from that point forward. So what I did was I thought about what I wanted for my future. And that initially was scary because it was unknown. And even though the future is always unknown, I don't know, I had the security before with my husband and my life before that, that whatever I wanted was going to happen. And but after, facing these losses and these, difficult challenges, the reality that I had so little control over my future was so present for me, and I felt really powerless in that, but I decided that I was going to give it a try anyways. And initially, again, I struggled, but I got into it. And this is something that I recommend that you do. And again, you don't have to do this all at once, but these are things that you can get started with and you can start trying. So one is, I call it crafting your career and life vision. And this is, I created a workbook for this too, but what you can do is you can just get 3 blank sheets of paper, and across the top of one, write, be, across the top of another, do, and across the top of the other, have. And so, and you can ask yourself these questions. And before you sit down to do this, maybe you want to start, give yourself a few, maybe 2 weeks to start going through this. And each time, maybe you give yourself 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and sit quietly, center yourself, and just really quiet your mind and focus on the possibilities that you're going to be able to generate from doing this. And then just start writing down your ideas. On the B page, you can start writing down anything that you want to be. So think about how you would feel every day as a person, as a professional, what kind of attributes you want to embody, and just write about as what comes to mind for you. And I encourage you to write it in the first person so that it's like you already are that person. And this is important because your brain doesn't know the difference. It only knows what you tell it. So if you tell it that I am brave, that I am courageous, it will believe it. And then it will organize your behaviors around that reality. On the do page, write about anything that related to your interests and your goals. What is it that you want to do? If you could do anything, what would it be? What would you do? And on the have page, write about the desires that you have for your life. Dream about what it is that you want to attract into your life, and dream big. Allow yourself to dream big. Don't hold back. So much has already been taken from you. This is your opportunity to imagine what could be. And initially, of course, this may be a little bit difficult. So I'd encourage you to get started. And then over time, as you think about it, write some things down. For me, it took some time for me for ideas to begin emerging, but I'm so glad that I did, because when I was ready, everything sort of came into focus for me. So I really enjoyed doing this activity. As I look back, it helped me to explore and to really hone in on what I really want. And it opened my mind to the possibilities in my life. And it encouraged me to actually design my life exactly the way I wanted it to be. And it was a chance for me to be creative and to dream big in a way that I didn't think was possible for me. And after I finished doing this exercise, what I did was I looked back and I reflected on it, and I looked at some of the themes and patterns that came up. And I chose some that were already a part of my reality, and I committed to continue doing them. And then I also chose a few that became goals for me to work on moving forward. So that's the second thing that I look back on that really helped me. And another activity that I did, and I want to sort of pause with you now and encourage you, if you have a scratch piece of paper, to think about this. This also helped me to identify some goals for myself, and we'll revisit this in just a moment. But think about, as to the best of your ability, moving forward in your future, if you were to look at your finances, family and relationships, recreation and leisure activities, your health, your household, your social connections, and your career and professional life, what is it that you would want? If you're able to, think of 1 or 2 things in each category, that's great. If you're only able to think of one thing, period, that's great. If you're not able to think of anything just yet, that's okay. We can talk a little bit more about that. But I want to pause and give you about 30 seconds to think about this and write down your ideas around this. So in my future, I want. Okay, so I want to pause here. So looking at the list that you were able to generate, if you were able to give yourself a rating of where you are in those areas right now. So one being not at all, and 10 being, it's the best that it can be. So give yourself a rating on each one of those areas. And then think about for those areas that you rated less than a 10, what would it take to move up 1 point in each of those areas? And perhaps you might want to pick one of those areas or one action, and that could be a goal for you. So this part of, what helped me was the reflection through the journaling, and the other part that helped me was pick the intentional, goal setting and actions. And the third thing that I had to recognize and I had to embrace is that I'm not defined by my circumstances. And this is something that was really difficult for me. When you experience loss and other significant unexpected life challenges, there's a tendency for you to allow those experiences to define your entire existence. At least that happened for me. Through those experiences, I felt like I had lost my identity. I didn't know who I was anymore. I was no longer employed at the place that I had been employed at for almost 10 years. I was no longer Mark's wife. I had, changed by the brain tumor. So I was physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically different. And for a long time, I asked myself, who am I now? And I really struggled with redefining my identity. And I had to learn that I am not my circumstances. I'm not the label of my personal or professional titles. I'm so much more than that. And while that was really important for me because I was stuck and I was having a hard time moving forward in my life. I felt like I was spinning my wheels. And so I began to dig a little bit deeper in reflection. And I realized, well, yes, I am a career counselor by a professional title. I'm a widow by circumstance, and I'm a brain tumor survivor by circumstance. What makes me unique and good at what I do is how those experiences work together in my life today and in my career. And that was my new identity. So I sort of folded in those experiences to create a new sense of identity for myself. And by doing that, it led me to a renewed sense of purpose to help others after loss. As I began to see myself outside of those labels of my circumstances, I saw my personal characteristics that had enabled me to get through the challenges, those that had developed as a result of these life challenges, and those new abilities would propel me forward. And seeing myself from that different lens, it really boosted my confidence. And I saw a lot more opportunities, not only just to live a fulfilling life, but I was also able to rebrand my business, my professional identity, and all of that became much easier. And so one of the other exercises that I'm going to share with you is I call it, the gifts of the head, hands, and heart. And in this, again, take a notebook, or you can get 3 blank sheets of paper. On one, you would write on one page head, on one page hands, and one page heart. And again, take some time, maybe over a couple weeks, to be intentional and reflect on this. And each time that you sit down to maybe do your journaling, quiet, take a few quiet moments before you get started, and then start writing. So when I started thinking about what do I know, and what you can do this by journaling, you can also do this with assessments, a skills assessment, but I did this with journaling initially. And I wrote down some of the things that I knew. This is an example of some of the things that I wrote down at the time. And I thought it was kind of fun and interesting. And then I started writing down the skills that I had. So on this page, this is similar, except for I focused on the application of my knowledge. So not only what I know, but how I applied that knowledge, and what am I able to do as a result of what I knew. And then these ideas came to me, and I wrote those down. And then I started writing down what I'm passionate about. And this is what is meaningful to me. And this for me is my why. And this is what motivated me to do certain things. And so as I did these exercises and looked at how they intersected, I clearly saw some themes there around using my skills and my knowledge and abilities to counsel and help others, to communicate, and to lead others. And so with these exercises, this one included, I was able to start seeing a vision for my life forming. And so these lessons and these actions that I took, they really unlocked my vision for the future. And oftentimes people don't do these because it's really hard. I mean, frankly, at the beginning of the grieving process, it's really hard. But I felt like there was a valve, a steam valve, that I needed to release steam. And these activities really helped me to do it. I needed an outlet. So you have grief groups, you have people that you talk to. And for me, journaling, because some of my ideas initially were very raw, I didn't really feel comfortable talking to other people about it. So that's where I got really comfortable with personal reflection. Um, but again, by completing these exercises that I just shared with you, you'll get energized. You're gonna, as your mindset shifts from doubt and fear to abundance and opportunity, and you'll have personal information that you can draw from to set goals for yourself and to pursue those goals. And I talk about goals because goals are very important, uh, especially after loss, when so much seems to have been taken away from us. As we're looking into the future, we need something to go towards. And our goals give us something to go towards. They give us a roadmap. They provide us with a recipe for success. They give us a guide for realizing our hopes and our dreams, and our new hopes and our new dreams. And they help us to set our priorities. So all of those activities that I did helped me to do this. And I'm a goal-oriented person. I was before my husband passed away, before I went through all that. And that was sort of suspended for a few years while I was just kind of surviving. But when I was able to start revisiting this idea of goal setting, it really helped me to come alive again. It really renewed my engagement with life again, because it was something that I had done before. And you might have heard of the SMART goals, framework. And so it's helpful. So it's not enough to just say, I want to do this, but you want to get some texture around your goals. So you can use the SMART goal model to apply to the goals that you set for yourself. So the bottom line is that you get to define the future that you want. You get to define what purpose and meaning looks like for you, and what goals and aspirations you want to pursue in the future. And one of the ways, again, that I was able to direct this new energy was into creating programs and guides. And one of the things that I did was I created a journaling program for people to get started building the habit of intentionally focusing on what is good in their lives and what it is that they want for their future, and building the habits to be able to sustain them on the journey. And so I call that Career Visioning 101. And that's something that I created as a result of my experiences. Some other resources that you may be familiar with are, of course, Soaring Spirits International. And I put those there, and you can, take a screen grab of those resources. And these are other resources that really helped me. So I encourage you and invite you to connect with me on all the platforms. I'm pretty, active and visible on any of the platforms. You can also send me an email. And if you want to chat about your specific situation and get some suggestions about how to apply this to your specific situation, just reach out to me and I'd be happy to, talk with you for a few minutes about that. And so now I want to pause and answer questions and have a little discussion.
Markel, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I love when you said hope was beginning to take hold. That to me is so powerful. And if you're watching the replay or if you're here live and hope is not yet beginning to take hold, Markel had that too. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? There was absolutely a time that hope was nowhere to be found. But then eventually, within some intentionality, with some journaling, hope began to take hold. And so I think that's such a beautiful statement. Markel, what would you say to folks? You talked a lot about the future, such good content, and you detailed your own journey. What if you're in a place now where the future you can't even begin to think about the future? What's the first next step?
It's a great question, and I would say it's okay, and that is totally normal. And in the beginning of my talk, I sort of said that this may be too soon for you. And what I had to do is I took action even when I didn't feel like it. And the action that I took was just to try to capture my thoughts about, like I said, for me, it was gratitude. For someone else, it might just be, gosh, every day is just such a struggle. And you know what, though? I'm getting through the days, and I'm going to honor and acknowledge that I'm getting through those days. And I'm just going to write down every day that I do something. I got out of bed today. I fed myself today. Oh, I fed my kids too, or
Mhm.
whatever it may be. And by capturing the little itty bitty tiny daily successes, momentary successes, over time, that'll grow. And over time, you'll start to see that, hey, you know what? I am capable. I am capable of living this thing called life, and I'm capable of mastering or at least managing and navigating this life after loss. But I encourage you to get started by just doing the itty bitty, teeny tiny thing that you can manage right now until you can do a little bit more, until you can do a little bit more.
Yeah, just doing today. Thank you so much. If you're watching the replay, be sure to contact Markel in one of these ways. Markel, thank you so very much.